Very well. How's that supposed to mean?
No, I mean like, you're going to make it work because you're going around that way.
Did we get that away? Yeah. It's very
And it'll be a good experience.
Can you give me water?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Which water is it? Okay, are you sure? I'll give you a fresh one. Alec, do you want water? This one over here. So we're just going to do these. Yeah. I've been trying to make some that it's so yeah, she's like to have water. I didn't know if your NWE beer was sufficient in that, but do you want Jolly Rancher to go at it? Well, later. Oh, right.
There may be time.
They come, I'm going to be. Cool Rockets? We have a basement. Trying to change the
I'm assuming he's connected.
I have got 9 months.
I'm not sure. I haven't seen her come back.
Okay, well, why don't you go?
She just like set up. I didn't recognize her.
You don't just get like anniversary? That would be fun. Could you do that? We should do it. I don't want
I call this meeting to order. Everyone, please stand. Mr. Elliott, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to our regularly scheduled board meeting. It is a beautiful August evening. Thank you for taking some time out of your evening to join us. Couple of quick little housekeeping items. Everyone, please remember to turn your cell phone off or to vibrate mode. Quick question, is anyone here this evening intending to make public comments regarding a non-agenda item? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, all right, so if not, I will skip the portion of reminding you of the public participation instructions until later. Given that, do we have any board comments or observations on non-agenda items at this time? Okay, seeing none, let's dive right into the agenda. Let's start with number 1, approval of the minutes, the July 10th regular board meeting minutes. You have the board meeting minutes in front of you. Do we have any additions or corrections? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve those regular board meeting minutes as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Board meeting minutes are passed. Moving on to the communication discussion portion of our agenda number 2, the superintendent's report. Mr. Wertz.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Well, good of the preseason of school, the two recognitions I think are slightly important. Larry Smith and Bob Hislop both were recognized into the Coaches Hall of Fame this month up in Great Falls. Mr. Wilson was able to attend, and we do have plaques that will be coming hanging in the in Linderman soon. So congratulations to both of those gentlemen. Almost 60 years of coaching experience between the two of them. Polson Middle School roof project. Remember, there was a delay in their scheduling, so they didn't get here when we thought they were there, a couple of weeks late. Alan and I visited a little bit about that earlier. But they are here today. They're on site, mowed in, and actually tearing the roof up and putting it down. So they're in phase 1, and they're about a quarter of the way down already today, just on the gym. So just on the gym, our biggest problem area, got a report that they're already a quarter of the way done. So what they're doing is they're tearing it up and putting it down at the same time. So there's not an open area. So we'll tear it up, lay down the membrane, and then go off to the next section. So good to see that they're here at the end. I guess they're tearing it up. I'm going to ask Rhonda, Ms. Krause, to help us with this. With on our academic side, again, we reported this last month, but pretty excited about having the STARS preschool program up and running. And currently, we have Ms. Pinkmeyer is in Helena training. Things are rolling. Ms. Crowley would like to update us on where we're at with our preschool.
Yeah, we found out a couple weeks ago we were given the grant for the full funding that was requested, $149,500 for 2 years. And so luckily we had kind of a plan in place. We just have started implementing that. We've got the room, we've got teachers and staff moved, filled. We are in the, Janelle is getting trained even as we speak on the data. Because it's a grant, it's going to be fairly heavily monitored by data, so that will be fun to share with you. We are going to be starting promotion this week, and we're going to be starting enrollment next week. There'll be 18 students, and I've already had, even today, I had 4 or 5 people interested in putting in applications for that, so I do not think it's going to be hard to fill those positions. And so we're just really excited to get started with this, and it's going to be an exciting place, Cherry Valley.
Trustees, any questions?
Okay, moving on. Training. So I was able to attend the LPLP, the Learners Program for the SAM, which is the School Administrators in Montana, out of Helena. That is the organization that supports administrators, namely superintendents. Again, I'll be working with Joel Polkowski, which is the retired Evergreen superintendent. He was there 37 years. He'll be my sounding board, my mentor, that'll be assigned to me for the 2nd year in a row. So it's embedded support, and while I was there, I also signed up 3 of our newest administrators for that same support. I think that we have good people in place, and then owe it to them to make sure that they have the right people that support them. The great thing about the LPLP program is that they have mentorship that's not tied to the district, which means that they're even safer than normal. Meaning that they can bounce ideas off of them, and what would you do in case this looked like. And so again, it's a really great opportunity for young administrators to have that sounding board that's emotionally safe on all ends, with all kinds of good experience that they bring to the table. So that was on Monday. Then Tuesday, Wednesday, I was able to attend with our admin team the SAM Leadership Institute. Bill Daggett, you'll hear me talk a lot about him. I He's a phenomenal speaker. He was able to, I guess, pre-season get the fluids going again. It was nice to hear the jargon and get going professionally. And, so we spent 2 days there with my admin team. I think another great opportunity that was just landed in our lap. A gentleman, the regional director for Payne West, asked if we'd be willing to host a regional board training, and that means board members from Kalispell, Hot Springs to Our Lake would gather in Folsom at the high school. And you'll see that's in September, so I will make sure I give you more leeway on it. But Bea would be the person that would be presenting, and it's on boardmanship, social media, boundary evasion, that stuff that just is a good reminder for all of us to go through. And the great thing is the connectivity with other boards across our reservation in the valley. So that'll be coming up in September. More closely to our schedule, it would be the kickoff event. We'll be with staff on Friday and then Monday and Tuesday. I'm asked that I will again send the invite out, but it's on Friday. Our social will be from 8 to 8:30, gathering, food in the lobby, kind of a breakfast items, and then we'll have our kickoff from 8:30 to 10 o'clock with Teacher of the Year, Classified Employee of the Year, board introductions, and so look for that in an email. It'll be coming towards you for an invite. I also would like, this is a weird part, who wants to flip hamburgers? So we are also going to have some people help barbecue. So if you're available, I will. I'll ask in an invite through an email that we'd like to have board there on help us serve burgers. It's one of the things that I think it's privileged to serve our staff and our people that work with our kids, and so we'll be there, greet and talk and socialize with our teachers on that Friday as well. So look for that. Under the other, I would say that appreciated our meeting today. 2 out of the work session with strategic planning and then our budget work. Important work. Excited about where we're at and the possibilities. From that, this Wednesday I will meet with the admin team and we'll flesh out what we discussed today in terms of strategic plan. Budget, that will take care of itself. We'll go tonight. And then on Thursday, I have legal training with Bea and my admin team. And so we'll be talking about those important issues in 504s, out-of-school students, IEP students, and so there'll be some training for admin on Wednesday and Thursday of this week. And then with that same invite, there will be an opportunity to have 2 to 3 board members, trustees, sit on a district core value committee, and that'll be in partnership with each school having a leadership team that will come together and really to dust off the mission statement, who we are, what we believe in, what are our values, and I want to go over that. So you'll have an invite on who would like to volunteer for that committee as well. Important work that needs to get done. And that'll be, as I said in our strategic plan, it'll be 3 to 4 meetings and roughly a half a day, if not more, of work during those 3 to 4 times that we come together. So look forward to people volunteering for that, and if we have more than 3, that would be all right as well. So feel free to volunteer for any one of those that are coming their way. That's all I have for you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thanks. Any follow-up questions for Superintendent Waltz? Trustees? Okay, thanks, Rex. Let's move on to number 3, board committee updates. Mr. Anderson, you want to give us an update on facilities now that we're getting ready to occupy them?
Actually, we haven't had a meeting yet.
Okay.
But usually the 1st of September.
Okay.
We have our first meeting for the year to go over where we're going to go for the year, so.
Okay. Given that we discussed budget earlier today and some strategic planning, I have a feeling that you're going to be getting a little more interest from trustees on facilities upcoming over the next few months. So just a little heads up. Okay, policy committee, Steve and Shannon, have you guys met recently?
No.
Okay, I have on good authority from Carl that you probably will be. Aren't there several policies that are coming down the pipe?
I'm sure Mr. Lutz will have lots of stuff.
Okay.
It's
All right, it is imminent, so just a heads up there as well. Budget committee, as I said earlier today, trustees met to go over in pretty substantial detail the budget that we will be considering for passage this evening. We also discussed that with administrators as well to get their input and perspective, and we certainly appreciate that. We will have the opportunity to review that this evening later in the agenda as well. Negotiations committee, you have in front of you later in the agenda, we will have the tentative agreement from PCEA that we will be considering, and we are waiting to begin negotiations with our certified staff. And just so you know, I know it's a little late, it's just simply been scheduling has been really difficult this summer with all the parties, so don't want anybody to think that there's anything else going on there. Class A caucus, that's all done for now. And I know transportation committee met, correct? That's
No.
July? No? What? How did I miss that? I thought it was
It was
always in
supposed to be in
July.
July, I never got notified, so if they met without me, so.
Son of a gun!
Which I will have to give a little bit of grief for that.
Okay, and superintendent evaluation committee. I have no knowledge of
We haven't.
We have
movement on
not.
that. Okay.
Chanel was supposed to get us some info.
She has it.
Okay. Push. All right. Budget report. Are we pushing in that until?
I don't have it until after the claims,
Okay.
so there's nothing further to add there.
Okay.
Participants.
All right. So let's continue then to consent agenda, which is number 5. Are there any specific issues that need to be pulled for individual consideration from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion at this time to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as submitted. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The consent agenda is passed. All right, moving on to new business. Now let's talk about the budget. Number 6, Pamela.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I included 2 different scenarios in the packet, in the budget packet, and I'm going to go over packet 2 with you, which will include the building reserve permissive levy, and we will visit about that, and then I guess we can go from there. In looking at the general fund budget, we have it set at $7,837,346.44. That is the maximum amount that we can go to without an additional vote from the public. That amount, though, is a little elusive in knowing that because of Senate Bill 261, which we visited about earlier, there are some reductions, and in elementary it means just over 30,000 in reductions. We have the opportunity to adopt this budget bill at that full amount because we do not want to lose our budget authority, but we do know that in the budgeting of that money, we will not probably get that money. So therefore, that number that we are adopting is without, and do I have that in? That reduction that we spoke of in the 261. So if you look across there, we had some reserves and we were able to hold on to that and keep the mills at 87.92, which is on the last page of your packet shows the change in the mills is up 0.38 from last year. The next fund, transportation at $954,260. We have 20% in our, or we have actually 14.49% of our 20% that is limited in that fund right now. The rest of it we reappropriated back to help with lowering those mills. And so there was a change of minus 0.28 in the mills in the transportation of the budget that we are proposing there. Bus depreciation is for the purchase of new buses or the replacement of buses. This year, Mr. Welts and I looked at the depreciation schedule and did a 4% increase on each of the buses. We are allowed an 8% each year. Typically, it's been about 1 to 2%. Last year we were at 2. This year we bumped it to 4 to look at where those numbers would allow us. And then the recommendation from the transportation director, we could purchase 2 new buses and also maybe trade another bus with the funds that we are looking at there with at the 4%. That there gives a little more mills, but doesn't do the max that we could do for the taxpayers. We're just trying to be good stewards of that. So that would increase the bus depreciation 0.3 mils for that amount there. Tuition fund. This is going to seem quite a bit different from last year at a 0 budget. Traditionally, special ed fund tuition funds has been used for detention services or other services that we are having to contract out for some students. And this year, one of those tools that the legislative session has been giving us, we can levy special ed tuition fees to help the general budget there. So some individualized care for students or parent help we put in there at the 32, and we did that on the high school as well to help bridge that gap that the 261 is creating. So that mill there from 0 to 1.1 this year on the mill change. Retirement, we have chose to keep the full 20% in reserves. You never know who we may need to pay out a severance pay or a retirement incentive. We can use those funds there for all of those benefit costs. But we still reappropriated $170,000 to lower that. Adult ed, $30,000. We kept that at $30,000 as we did last year. That's and actually it's a decrease because our taxable fund went up a little at minus 0.58. Technology fund was, and this is basically just what we are awarded. This is a 47% decrease from last year in the allocations that we are allowed. So that is quite a bit lower than what we are technically seeing in the technology fund. Flexibility fund, that is a fund that can be used kind of like a building reserve or a multi-district, and we did not have any money in those funds at the time, and we had a very nice taxpayer give us a little boost of $40-some. And so therefore we need to put it in that flex fund where the state allows, and in order to even spend that, we need to adopt that. So that is the only money in there. Building reserve. This is where much of the discussion has been. I guess I can skip down to, oh no, that's the last one on this one. Building reserve. Okay, so we have, and there is a sheet in there for looking at how it's calculated. Let me get to it really quick. Maybe I can put that in that one. Right here. So for the budgeted building reserve, which was voted on for a 5-year levy, it generates 8.45 mils at 245,000 for the elementary. And with this permissive levy, building levy, that the legislative session has allowed us with Senate Bill 307, we can then mill another 4.62 to receive an additional $133,900. That enables us to add to our building reserve fund, although we do have to keep the funds separate, the fund line items separate, to help with our infrastructures, our buildings, our repairs. Certainly not enough to do a lot of our big projects, but it goes a long way towards doing the things that we really need to do in our maintenance. And that is totally your decision, and that was the difference in the two packets, to include that or not. It does not have to be voted on by the taxpayers. It is your discretion to add that or not. I'll ask if there's any questions at that point before I quickly go through the high school. Is there any questions?
Trustee, sorry. Go ahead with the high school panel.
Okay, thank you. So for the high school, you're going to hear much of the same types of deals. The general fund is our max without the a vote. We have that 3.98 reserve in there. Transportation. Transportation is just for the cost and maintenance of running our buses, not purchasing buses. We keep a 14% reserve in there instead of the 20. It just gives the taxpayer a little bit of a break at the 10.68 mils versus if we kept the full reserve. That did go up in the high school, 2.27 on that high school fund. Bus depreciation, same thing. That's the other side of the elementary for purchasing buses and radios and those kinds of things. 2.25 mils, which is up 0.26. There again is the other side of the tuition fund to help offset the general fund for the special ed costs. And retirement. We keep the full 20% in high school retirement as well for those unforeseen costs, but we were able to reappropriate $104.77. Adult ed, traditionally that's been kept right at $125,000. We are hoping to expand some classes and whatnot this year to utilize some more of that, have some great new ideas that are coming up. So instead of keeping a full 35% in that reserve, which we don't foresee using, we keep it at 10 and then reappropriate the rest to lower those mills. So that's a 3.04 mil, and that's up 0.17 from last year. We don't have a non-operating. Technology, again, that's exactly what we will get for our entitlement. That was decreased by one of the legislative moves this year. Flexibility fund, there's the other part of that donation we got from a taxpayer, $9.67. Building reserve, this one has the $182,000 in the voted levy part that we're in the second year of 5 years. And so that permissive part is $64,700, and that will cost another 1.77 mils. And that would be, like I said, used for those maintenance and building projects. And the last is the debt service fund, and our payment for the year is $240,000. That matures in 2023, and that also reflects it's $20,000 some odd dollars for the interest twice a year, so $40,000 there, and that will stay status quo at 0.77. I guess that was just up 0.06. So total, your mills there are going up 11.38. Right? Let me just look at my shoulder.
11.28.
Oh, my eyes are blurred.
It's been a long day.
Yes. Yeah, and so if there aren't any other questions, then you're free to discuss and talk about the same.
So, what does it equate to, like a $200,000 house type of thing?
Oh.
Do you have additional copies of that?
You know, I certainly can.
Oh, is it in there?
Yes, trustees, if you look in the packet, our work session packet, I think it's the second to last page, is that right, Shannon?
Yeah. It's yellow, highlighted.
It's- Yeah, and I
It's
didn't.
that much, like $14.
Yeah, so-
Okay.
I'll,
Did look at it.
I'll just read it out. So, on the elementary side, in that 133, or the 4.6 mils, on a $100,000 house, it's, if you're following along with me, that's $6.24 a year, and $12.48 for a 200,000. And that's, Steve, that's just the elementary. On the high school side, it's 64,000, 64.7. It's 1.7 mils, and on a $100,000 house, it's $2.39 a year, and $4.79 for a 200,000. So we see that equate. So we said it was $17. Collectively, it's 17.27.
And I would encourage trustees to please recap and share some of the things that we did discuss and consider for the benefit of the folks that are here this evening. We had a pretty exhaustive discussion about these issues, both our current budget, how we haven't made any decisions yet, obviously, that's for this public meeting. But the different factors that we've taken into consideration to get us where we are now. Would any trustees like to share those with the folks that are here tonight? Some of the things that are kind of rolling around before we take any public comment and look for a vote? Oh, you guys are going to make me do all the talking. Come on.
Well, I mean, basically, are you permissive levy? Is that, I mean, that's kind of the
Absolutely.
main question.
Or just generally our budget situation, the things that we need, or, for people maybe who haven't walked through our schools lately, or this is the first time that they've really come in to listen about the budget.
So, I mean, I think the big thing is a permissive levy, which of course allows us to raise taxes without input from without the vote of the public. To me, was brought on by the state, and that they did not do any quality schools grant funding at all. And so this was their alternative they gave us. It seems that the legislature believes that the facilities are our responsibility, and doesn't seem to take into account that there's varying degrees of economic viability in different districts, which I think is the point of the community quality school grant program. Having said that, we still have those needs. The facility list is long, and there's no money for it. So personally, I think that we really don't have an option other than to do this. And I think that the district, Rex and Pam, have been very careful about minimizing the burden on the taxpayers while still trying to keep our facilities in somewhat an operable condition. So that's my 2 cents.
And for those of you who've not been following really closely, the Polson School District has been shortlisted above the purported funding line for that Quality Schools grant for 2 legislative funding sessions in a row, which would have gotten us somewhere between $1 million, $1 million plus to replace our very, very aging boiler in Cherry Valley and upgrade those heating systems in that facility. Now, even should we choose to pass that levy, that will not yield us funds nearly to replace those systems, but maybe give us something to stopgap where we are while we look for other funds and some other potential ways to address those issues. And that's not, those are certainly not our only facilities issues here in our district, but that's one of the things that we have discussed as a district, not only as trustees, but as administrators and teachers as far as the things that we're looking at. And we've also talked about, certainly before we even got to that discussion, we've gone through months before this, looking at every corner of the budget. Do we looking at positions and consolidating and looking at retiring positions and ways that we can save money and really just be incredibly responsible to our taxpayers and what we can do while still providing an incredibly quality education to our students. And so we feel the burden of this very, very heavily and are trying to balance those needs. And so this is not something that we're taking lightly at all. And so we're hoping that we're able to thread that difficult needle as we have this discussion. Any other comments or certainly questions, follow-up questions for Pamela from the trustees or other comments from the trustees before we take this under consideration or get other comments from the public? And this would be, we would pass this permissive levy, or the consideration of this levy would be just like the budget for a 1-year period of time. This would not be some kind of thing that would last forever. So just like with any other budget, it would be for 1 year's time. It would come up for public review annually like anything else, or at least I think the legislature gave us authority for 2 years to allow for its consideration annually. After that, we don't know what the legislature will do when they meet again. At this point, I'd like to open it up to the public for questions or comments. This is certainly serious. It impacts all our kids in our community. We'd love to hear from you. It's a big one. We have pictures. We have pictures and graphs.
Well, trustees that were here, this is a graph that for both elementary and the high school district. It talks about the number of mills, the need to ask, for the number of mills that we're asking for, but it also takes into consideration the taxable value, the property value. And so you can see as the value goes up, the need to ask for a number of mills goes down. And then when the value of the property goes down, then you need to ask for more mills than is there. So it's a good visual reminder of what that looks like.
Okay, seeing no questions or comments from the public, I am going to look to the trustees. The information that was gone through, you need to do one for the elementary and the school district separately, is that correct? Let's look first at the elementary school district. The budget that was discussed line item by line item was the option number 2, which included the building reserve permissive levy included in the overall budget. So I will present it to you in this way. Trustees, at this point, I would entertain a motion to pass the elementary school district as presented for the 2017-2018 school year that includes the building reserve permissive levy as presented.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Do we need to do it in any kind of special way? Do we need to count off or just regular? Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Do we need any further discussion?
Do we need was it good enough that Pam talked about the board includes in minutes and intends to budget at authorized level? Is that part of our,
Oh,
does that need to be in?
Do you need me to read that out loud? Do you have specific language for me to read into the minutes?
okay, he does.
Okay.
Is that the very top?
Thank you.
See that?
Thank you.
Okay. The motion as presented We are amending it to include the following language. That it assumes that we are adopting the highest budget available so as to preserve the budget authority in subsequent years. We further include that to the extent that we decline to fill the gap with other non-levy revenue or reserves so as to avoid a loss of GDP, and we only spend based on the projected revenues available to support such budget. All right. That's because should the legislature, or the legislature has already kind of reported to us that they're not going to fund us at the full level of that maximum legal authority, but if we don't say that we intend to pass it at that level, we don't get to fund it at that level in future years. So it's one of those things. So, is everybody clear on what we're voting on and what the motion on the table is? Yes? Okay. So do we need any further discussion? Okay, so including all that extra legal rigmarole, we are voting on option number 2, which is the 2017-2018 elementary district budget, which includes the building reserve permissive levy. We have a motion in a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? We have one in opposition, excuse me. Okay, you got everybody?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Moving on. Okay, moving on to the high school. At this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the high school district budget for 2017-2018, including the building reserve permissive levy at the maximum general fund, highest budget available with the same language and preservation of budget authority. Is that good? Do we need other? Okay.
And not to fill it with others.
And not to fill it with other, et cetera, et cetera. Are we clear on what that motion is? Is that adequate for the trustees?
Yes.
Public? Okay. Okay, I would accept a motion as such.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we need further discussion? Seeing no need for further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That's okay. Did you get it?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We have, our budgets are approved. Thank you very much, trustees. I appreciate you all participating and voting your conscience, and I know that was a difficult discussion, and everybody participated, and thank you very much. That was a hard one. Everybody's trying to do the best. All right, moving on. Thank you for letting me borrow that.
Yes.
Back to my agenda. Number 7, recommendation to approve tentative agreement with PCEA. Mr. Wells.
Mr. Elliott? Yeah, that was I recommend that we approve the recommendation for the PCEA memo of understanding or agreement as written.
Okay. Trustees, any questions? Okay. At this point, we have no questions. Let's see, at this point I would entertain a motion to approve it as written.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any comments from the public? We have none. Any further discussion from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the PCEA and Postal School District wage and health insurance negotiations as submitted, final tentative agreement, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The tentative agreement is passed. Okay. Does that suffice, Mr. Elliott?
Yes.
We're good? Okay.
And just for your information, the union overwhelmingly voted in favor of this
Sweet.
agreement as well.
All right. Okay, moving on, number 8, recommendation to approve wage increase for non-represented employees. Mr. Wells.
Your recommendation to approve the wage increase for the non-represented employee group as written.
Okay. Any questions, trustees? Seeing none, at this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the wage increase for the non-represented employees as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any comments from the public? Seeing none, do we have any further discussion from the trustees? I have stunned them all into a...
You did all right.
All those in favor of approving the wage increase for non-represented employees signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The wage increase is approved. Number 9, recommendation to approve the high school student handbook.
Madam Chair, I'll give it on. On the handbook.
Oh, okay. So Mr. Wilson is not here, so I'm assuming it is Jay is here to make a comment.
I'll get started before we get going, Mr. Sampson. The handbook threw a lot of
There's quite a little bit of red in there.
A lot of red in there. We, I know that Trustee McGinnis had worked with dress code issues with Mr. Sampson in the high school administration. But really what we did this year was different, is that we vetted our handbook through VIA, our legal services, and got some good information. And you can see the representative red in there, is that there was some recommendations to make changes. We also did that with the middle school handbook, so that we can get the middle school and high school book consolidated, if you will, that policies and practices are more consistent, so kids aren't confused when they go from one building to the other. There will be, the middle school handbook had already been printed, and so there will be some need to make that change through this year and then obviously into the next year, but we will manage that change throughout this year. So anyway, Mr. Sampson, you would mind?
I have one change in there on page 23. Under the dress and grooming, item number 4, it says types of garments are not prohibited. That not needs to come out. They are prohibited.
Oh,
You can't
okay.
wear pajamas and beach wear to school.
That answered my question.
There were a lot of changes, so
And that was a good process, by the way, the dress code. I mean, and sort of where, I didn't think it was defensible, the one we had before.
Right.
And frankly, I thought it was incredibly sexist.
Yeah.
Kind of where I was coming from is that girls are not responsible for boys' behavior. And that is what our dress code sort of implied. I think they did a good job of making this as gender neutral as possible. I hope that flows through the staff's enforcing of it, because there's a lot of discretion given to staff, as it has to be, because that's one of those things that you never know.
Well, and fashion is so fluid and everything else, you can't legislate for
Right.
everything. No, I think, yes, thank you for bringing that up. I think you guys did a good job on something that's kind of one of those lightning rods. And I really appreciate it, for one. Thank you.
And so, Mr. Sampson, thanks for your work.
Yes,
And this
thank
has
you very
been,
much.
it's been
yeah, the dress code, we brought together a group of roundtable of girls and had a female counselor talk to them, and I was part of it, and then I left, and they had a lot of really good insight for us, so it was good.
Thank you for getting rid of the whole fingertip length thing. When was the last time you were in Target and find something that was fingertip length? I mean, you can't even buy stuff like that anymore.
The dress code is definitely running the gamut from strict to all over the place.
So, issues, your process, Mr. Sampson, you want to lead us through this, or where you at?
I mean, there are so many changes. It's just, a lot of them were suggested by legal counsel.
I like the fact that the handbook is vetted against our policies, and that's
Amen.
important.
Yes.
That they don't speak ill of each other. The policies in the handbook are tied together.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but since the parents and kiddos actually receive one of these, if they do conflict, this is what takes precedence. So we could have it in our policy that they can't do X, Y, Z, but since, because I know we've had that happen here at the board, that something came up, and that because the handbook said they could do this, and even though the policy at the board level said that they couldn't, since they had actually signed off on the handbook, there was enough legal, wiggle room that we had to go with what the handbook said. So the fact that now that they're consistent is huge.
I think it creates extenuating circumstances. Board policy always takes precedence.
But I do remember a specific situation where it created enough of a question that we were advised to not.
Yeah, it creates
Yeah.
those extenuating
Right, right, right,
circumstances
right.
where maybe the punishment isn't going to be as harsh or whatever. But board policy always takes precedence.
Supersedes.
Right.
It's the laws of the district.
Obviously, a lot of work went into this. Thank you. Any other final thoughts or guidance? from
No, I mean,
us?
it's just, I don't think you want me to go through it.
Point by point.
There's-
Any questions from trustees? Steve?
I was just reading on the graduation stuff, the gown thing. I know this is kind of a hot topic thing, but 2032. So it says, high school students will permit students to honor their American heritage. Should it say Native American or just American? So I know we had a Scottish guy.
Kill us.
Yeah, I heard that too.
So, I mean, I don't know how we want to do, this is a fluid situation as well, so.
That just came up not too long ago at a school in Michigan. And they changed it to heritage, and the same thing in Colorado. It's just straight to your student or the heritage of the, whatever you want to write, but there's no, they told them that there was no need to specify American or Native or anything else, just heritage.
What was the law?
Yeah, it's
Montana law
yeah.
only designates
Exactly.
Native American heritage
At this
in,
point.
in that law.
So is
So-
that
so-
only required to have intentional?
And that's in response to our Native American culture and the constitutional requirement we have to teach about Native American culture.
I'm assuming that should say Native American.
Will do. And then just to help with administration, I know pre-approved by administration prior to graduation or whatever. Should be a date? Because I don't know, a couple years ago we had this last minute thing. It's really close to the bind. So should we,
2 days prior to graduation.
something? We don't want this last minute, hey, I got this. This is prior to year-end checkout. Right, so year-end checkout is the date.
Yeah, dates always
The date always changes.
changes. So I think what, if I remember right, this year-end checkout is when the final date for them will be during graduation practice. That when they're down in the Linderman gym and they're going through it, that's their final. Then they go over to the church and have lunch. And then they get the yearbooks and then they're done. And so that's, at that point, it's finalized. Like you remember, in fact, I was in Germany that time and you guys had to make an executive decision.
And that will happen.
Oh, yeah, it will, but it'd be nice to have something definitive specifically.
And they need it, those students need to know that.
And then, yeah,
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
I agree. Makes sense?
Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Okay, at this point, I would entertain a motion that we approve the high school student handbook with the modifications suggested.
So,
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed? The handbook, the high school student handbook is Approved with corrections. Number 10, recommendation to approve the Lindeman student handbook. Ms. Wilson.
Just had some language changes, mostly grammar changes and formatting. I do have to note on page 4, we do have a teacher who was left off of the 4th grade teacher list, Shelley Howe. We will insert that when we put it to print.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can you refer to page number?
Sure.
110.
Oh, is there page numbers on the thing?
Yeah, this is page
Oh.
110.
Oh,
The packet page.
sorry, I don't, not privy to that fact, but it's page 4 of the
110. When I scroll.
So we're missing one. So 110.
Yeah, she said it would be correct in interest. Any other comments, trustees? Yes, I see trustees scrolling. Do you need more time? Okay. At this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the Lindeman student handbook with corrections. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the Lindeman student handbook with corrections signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The Lindeman student handbook is approved with corrections. Number 11, recommendation to approve the personnel report. Mr. Elliott.
We have a rather lengthy personnel report. Most of the report is rehiring our substitutes for another school year, so it is routine in nature. Other than if you have any questions, I would ask that you approve both the high school and the elementary report as submitted.
Trustees, any questions? Yes, Mr. Dupuy.
I understand there's some cheerleading coach deal going on. We have an applicant for the head cheerleading coach.
It's true.
That's waiting for background.
Correct.
Is it possible to make a motion to approve this person pending approval of background check?
It's
At this
contrary to your policy.
No, we do not do that.
It's just time issue. I mean, we got another.
No, I understand, but we have a long-standing policy of not doing that ever, never.
We can address that. We can do a special.
We can always do a special meeting.
I would like to do something like that because right now we're in kind of a limbo.
And we can always do a call-in or something like that if board members are amenable to it. It's a simple thing.
This time of year, we've done that in the past. It's not uncommon. We've called, just know that once set it, notice it 48 hours, and then we need to get the background in first, and then we can make some, if you're okay with that.
I'm fine with it. And I'll tell you a scary, hair-raising story about why we don't ever, never do that later.
No need ever know.
Okay. I'm sure we've never really ever happened again, but yeah, I will tell you why we never ever do that.
I'll make a motion that we accept the personnel report for the high school.
Okay. We have a motion second. Do you have any comments from the public? Do we have any further discussion from the trustees?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can I get the second? I didn't hear it.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further need for discussion, all those in favor of approving the personnel report for the high school district as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The personnel report for the high school district is approved as submitted. At this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the elementary school district report.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Do we have any comments from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the personnel report for the elementary school district as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? None, okay. It is passed. The elementary school district personal report is passed.
Thank you.
Moving on, number 12, recommendation to approve the out-of-district reports. Mr. Wells.
As is, I recommend that we approve our out-of-district reports as submitted.
Okay. At this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the high school out-of-district student reports.
So, second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any comments from the public? Do we have any further discussion from the board? All those in favor of approving the motion that has been forwarded, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The high school district out-of-district student report is approved. Okay, moving on. Out-of-district student elementary district, that's what it says, report. I would entertain a motion to approve that too.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the elementary district report. Do you have any comments from the public? Silent as the grave. Okay, any conversation and discussion from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the out-of-district report for the elementary district students, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It is passed. All right, seeing no further business before this board, I adjourn this meeting.
Thank you.
I'm going to sit down, Johnny. I'm going to re-entitle that student report, which I manual every single everyone.
And that's it.